Welcome to today's episode. I'm Shivan. I'm the sales coach here at Cognism. And I'm joined by who?
Michael Isernio.
Great to have you with us. Now, it would be great if you could just introduce yourself and just a little bit of background of who you are and what you do, just to give the listeners a little feel for you.
Absolutely. I started off my career on Wall Street working at Barclays, worked as an SDR and then as an account executive in software sales, and I currently am the founder of Narrative AI.
So, quite a bit of experience then, right?
Here and there.
Okay, just a little bit. All right, brilliant. So, the name of the podcast probably gives it away with the why did it fail? And one of the things that I've been really keen to dig into over my journey in sales is why things fail. A lot of time gets spent on like succession plans and the mutual action plan. And we've got this product and, this is what we can do for your organization. And as a leader, these are some of the things that my morning routine consists of. That stuff's great. And I'm sure we both got some great routines and things. Yet the failure is really where the growth is, right? And, from reading quite a few books, um, a lot of the times when people speak about failures, the readers and the viewers get more out of it because it's like it's that human to human connection where it's like, oh, me too. I didn't really want to talk about that. You've given me the safe space to talk about it. So, is there a scenario that you could share on your past or even current experience of something that hasn't quite gone to plan and it's been one of those failures that you could share with us, please?
Yeah, absolutely. And it happens all the time working in the startup world. Your daily life is pretty much failing until you get it right. I would say that for me, one of the most notable failures that I've had was a short stint as a VP of sales.
Okay.
And that had a lot of failures across the board. So I don't even know where to start there.
Okay. That's an interesting one. What made you think it was going to work?
I thought it would work because I had done all of the components of sales and parts of sales, and I'd seen how it worked over the years as an SDR and as an account executive. And was under the assumption that if we kind of bolted on these almost out of the box, modules for outbound, for closing, that if you had kind of the right market and the right product, it should all fit together.
That makes sense. What was it specifically that your vision was for that when you had that role? I'm sure you went into it and you're like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. What did that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a part of me was pulling myself to think about product market fit and really try and define that. And the other side of me was trying to almost let it go, let these
Yeah.
reps get out there and sell and figure it out in the market. And I
Mhm.
think that kind of, pulling back and forth was very interesting and something I didn't expect.
Okay. Okay. When did you kind of get the vibe, that gut feeling, the gut never lies, that gut feeling like this is probably not going to go the way I planned?
Yeah.
When was that? And could you just like maybe give us some insight into that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say maybe around 5 to 6 months in, because before you start to really worry about your job, you start to see uh, this divide between you and the executive team.
Yeah.
I think the more that I saw that, the more I realized how I could have, not to use cheeky sales language, but like discovery I could have done before I started this role to really align myself to what they wanted to do. And yeah, not
Yeah.
even align, but kind of just validate that this is the vision that I saw for the business as well. Not just hey, we have an exciting product. You've been in the space, you're in North America, you can build all these things for us and you can kind of head it up. Let's see how it goes.
Okay. And was there anybody along the way whilst you was building all of that and doing all of those things that maybe pulled your coat and was like, you know what? Maybe we're not on track here. Was there anybody that stepped in and maybe like tried to prevent that from happening?
That's a great question. I would say not necessarily stepped in. We didn't really have the sales experience there, which made it difficult, specifically software sales experience. So it made it difficult to really lean on someone. I would say it was more of a back and forth where I was actually getting pushed on to spend even more money and invest even more, still not seeing like the momentum that you need to see to feel comfortable investing. So it was,
Okay.
getting to a point where I think the executive team had felt like I had almost underinvested, and if they had invested more, they'd have better results at this point. Um, so maybe stylistic differences.
So you've unpacked a lot, and that's been fantastic. I've been able to get some insight into some of those things. Was there, was there a particular thing that was like, that was the Titanic moment where you hit that iceberg and you knew that was it? Was there was it like a red light indicator, so to speak?
Yeah, I would say the status of our outbound was not where it should have been, and that probably was like that engine light that was going off that I didn't pay enough attention to because we were getting wins in other places.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it
That
was
makes
an
sense.
interesting experience where it was 2020, 2021, and it was like at the cusp tail end of when you could kind of still buy an SEP and load it up with emails and generate a decent amount of pipeline.
Yeah.
But we were making cold calls as well, and just seeing that and kind of how that fell off as a team when you didn't have all of the things that I had had in the past, the venture funding, the PR, the name brand. When you didn't have that, it was very interesting to see how that fell flat, and that was a real kind of look in the moment or look in the mirror moment for me where I started to understand it was more about outbound quality than it was leaning on being in a sexy sector or a hot industry or a rising tide rises all boats or raises all boats.
That makes sense. Now, I know if I was asked this question, I'd like it might not be the most comfortable one, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Is how did you react or respond when it started to crumble?
That's a great question. I'm someone who just typically doubles down. I think I doubled down in the wrong way though. I think I doubled down in trying to uh, what I thought was doing was leading my team, where I was trying to understand more of like why were we missing the product market fit. And I think where I should have doubled down was getting in the trenches and making those cold calls. And I was part of the sales cycle, but I think I was leaning on the team too much to do it. Where I could have, different plan and different strategy overall. But looking back on the whole experience, they really need like a founding salesperson VP type of role where you could just have one person get in the trenches, see the results, and then pivot as they might.
Okay, makes perfect sense. Thanks for sharing. It's not always the easiest to unpack, live. Like this is where it went wrong, but thanks for being courageous. So, looking back, if you could revisit that, what would you do differently?
Assuming I've taken the role already.
Yeah.
Day one would be spent looking at what we have, and then I think comparing it to that other model that I was explaining, where there's really kind of one seller in there, not spending a whole bunch of money, not really allocating a whole bunch of capital, but trying to, as sellers, we all kind of know like when you're talking to a prospect and they kind of have that light in their eye and there's like that thing that's going to get the deal over the line, whether it's the initiative they have from the executive, the pain that's just been driving a huge problem for them and they just go on for hours talking about it. Finding those little moments, it seems like, is very important in this early stage. That way you can kind of define those moments. And if you're not in the trenches, you're relying on your team to find those moments and define those moments. And it's very hard to create a repeatable process that doesn't include the founder or the sales leader themselves.
It's such a refreshing thing to hear you refer to being in the trenches because you can make these really high level business critical decisions and the state of play and the customer facing and the rep facing, and if you don't really have your ear to what's really going on, that whole boardroom mentality kind of it falls flat. So it's really interesting to hear you say that. So there has to have been some stuff that worked. What were they?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the just large logo acquisition, as well as some key partnerships we had developed, were pretty key. Um, that was where we should have really double, triple, quadruple down, because they had the partners had the validation, they had the brand, they had the trust, they were already in the room.
Mhm.
It seems like it would have been a better use of our time to help them see how we fit into their client solution and then get that entry into the door. And I think we could have maybe even taken more of like a land and expand motion, because we really wanted that upfront contract, that kind of validation. But as you know, in software, the better validation, which pays off more in the long run, tends to be that user success, seeing that adoption. We went to a plant and we had folks who were like, I use this software every day. They're taking out the tablets and they're showing us, and they're bringing us the computers that they used before that are these massive 1980s IBM computers. So it was those wins and those validations, which was great. We just needed to scale that more, and we needed to take our focus off of everything that was distracting us.
Okay, that makes sense. Just for anybody out there with the reference to the big IBM computers, yes, we used to have a two-man team that needed to lift some of these bits of equipment back in the day. All right, so with all of the things that, and thanks so much for being so transparent and candid with it, from all of those things that you've mentioned, how has that shaped the leader that you are today?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, I would say that the way I'm starting narrative is taking all that and a lot of the learnings. I'm bootstrapping. I haven't been venture funded. I haven't seeked capital, and I'm trying to take the approach of, we're solving a solution, and if we can allocate capital that we think is going to help us solve that solution better, then we'll do it. But if it's going to be like a, hey, we're going to raise capital and then figure it out type thing, that's where I'm really not pressing the gas yet. So trying to take those career learnings of maybe moving slower and trying to
Mhm.
take your time versus, we need to do this as fast as possible. We need to get to that next round. We need to get to that milestone, because there's always going to be a next promotion that you're chasing.
Of course.
You kind of just have to be happy in what you got today and enjoy the moment.
Real easier said than done, right?
Exactly.
Live in the moment. Like the gift is the present, and yes, really difficult. All right. So, final question that I have for you today is, what advice would you give to anybody out there listening that's in a current similar situation now?
That's a great question. Specifically, in Outbound or as a founder?
To be fair, because you've touched on both, I'm going to throw that back to you and say on both, if possible, please.
Yeah. As a founder, I don't really know if I have much to offer in terms of advice, because my experience is a little bit more limited. I would say, don't feel pressured to do what everybody else is doing just because they're getting all the headlines in the news. Think about what you really want for your life, and what you need from a revenue standpoint and a money standpoint. And then try to think about, if you do take that path, where does it get you? I see a lot of founders and a lot of early stage employees put so much effort in to get this equity. And then by the time it's done, they only get a check for $1,000 or $2,000. So the slow path is a little bit more of a gruel, and it's a little bit more of a grind, and everybody knows that. But the beauty is you get to keep your equity.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks so much for your time, and you have a fantastic rest of the day.
Thank you. Pleasure to meet you.